what's up, everybody? Time for another social study, motivation, psychology video kind of thing. Remember, if you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel, super chat, PayPal, whatever you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. Before I start, you might ask Clayton, why the fuck is there two of you? Clayton, why is there two of you right now? Well, you know what? I was getting flooded with hate comments, and I saw a comment of a guy, and he was blabbering about how he knows I'm evil because only the most narcissistic person would ever show how they actually look on YouTube. So there's two of me today. Deal with it. I made that recent video, and this video gets into, kind of like a motivational video, although I've talked about it before. And I've talked about how, context is king and your perspective is what keeps you going in life. And when I talk about perspective, I bring this up because I made that one recent video and I talked about how my dad died. He killed himself. And at face value, it's a pretty crazy story, right? I had the dream my dad was going to die, and it was so real to me that he was going to die that I went to him when I woke up, and I was crying. I remember I was like, I can't go anywhere. You're going to die. You're going to die. And he actually did. He went and then got a gun right after that, and he shot himself. Now, I didn't see him shoot himself or anything like that, but, technically, I did. I see the blood on the floor. I still remember where the blood was. At face value, that's a crazy story, but I've said before, it doesn't really bother me. And that's because your perspective on life, the context of the story matters, right? And I say that because someone's like, whoa, that's crazy. Are you okay? I'm so sorry to hear that, blah, blah, blah. You're so strong. And the reason I say that is because to me, that's actually, although I agree it is a crazy story. Like if I think about it, it's a crazy story. But if you think about like the context of my life and, the perspective of what keeps you going, there's more important things to worry about than that, right? I didn't come from a lovey-dovey family, right? And, we'll tell some sad stories, right? You got to remember, I didn't come from a lovey-dovey family in the first place. It's not like I loved my dad. It's not like my dad loved me or my brothers, right? My dad was a swinger. My dad didn't want us, right? I remember now, and of course, when you get older, you realize, I do have vague memories of my dad. And I would remember when I would see my dad, I remember there were weird times that he would have girlfriends, and I remember being brought as a kid to these different places with girls, and me and my brothers would just have to sit, do whatever we do, and he would leave for hours. I remember my dad going to bars and everything like that. And of course, as a kid, I didn't realize what was happening, but my dad would go out for the weekend and he wouldn't leave us home alone, because God, who knows how old I would have been. Let's say I was 6 or 7 years old. I don't remember. And he would bring us to the bar and he would just tell us to sit in the seat while he would be partying at the bar, And then as I got older and I found out my dad was a swinger, I realized, oh, right. I realized that's what's going on, right? But the point is, it wasn't like a lovey-dovey situation, right? I've told the story before about why I don't say I love you. And even that the dad side of the family, not a very loving side of the family. And, I remember I had the one grandma. And it was one of those things like my grandma on the mom's side was more of like the cool grandma. Like I said, I didn't have a good upbringing, right? It wasn't like the worst upbringing. Life could always be worse. Life could be way worse, actually, right? My life could be way worse now, right? Things are bad. They don't know how bad things are, but things could be worse. That's, what I say, right? But, the mom side grandma was more like one of my only happy lives, or one of my only happy memories, excuse me, in life was every now and then my grandma would take me to the arcade on the weekend to play video games a little bit, right? Which I know the video game haters are going to watch this and they're going to be like, oh no, we believe Clayton was playing video games all the time. No, I didn't get to play video games all the time, right? So every now and then I would get to play Street Fighter at the arcade. My grandma would take me. But that was the quotation marks cool grandma. But my dad's side grandma it was terrible. She didn't want to do anything. And, it was one of those things like she would buy us, like for Christmas, she might buy us like a bag of popcorn, right? Sometimes it was a can of popcorn. Like that was what the grandma did. And I told the story before about why I don't say I love you is because I realized my grandma, right before that grandma was dying, whenever you get on the phone or you ever see like a family member, you're like, I love you, goodbye. I love you, goodbye. Oh, I love you. How are you doing? And that grandma, when she was about to die, and this is a crazy story too, right? Like I got some crazy stories in my life, right? She was like, Clayton, before you leave, don't tell me you love me. Don't tell me you love me. And you should never, ever tell anyone you love them ever again unless you actually love them. And I was like, whoa. Like, she's like, she wasn't. And the thing is, this isn't like, there's no like love loss or whatever that phrase is, right? It's not like I loved my grandma. But there was like, and I still have a tremendous amount of respect that to think that someone, and that was her dying words, and she died right after that too. Even more crazy. You're like, oh my God, Clayton, you told your dad he was going to die and then he got a gun and shot himself? Yes, I did. Your grandma said never say I love you again before you leave, and then she died right after that? Yes, she did. So weird shit, but anyway. So that was the last thing she ever said to me. She died right after that. But there was like a tremendous like amount, and there still is a tremendous amount of respect that could be someone's dying words to me. Don't tell me you love me. I'm about to die. Don't say it because I know you don't love me. And I don't want you to ever say it ever again. And that's one of the reasons I don't say I love you to any of my family members. I don't say it whatsoever anymore. I don't say it to any girl or anything like that unless it's for play. Unless it's like, I love you, baby. Baby, I love you. I love you so fucking much. That kind of thing, right. But like a true love, right? I don't say love you to family members. I come up from a family, again, I was abused growing up. It was not a loving, dovey atmosphere, right? There's a lot of depression in my family. And I always say it's almost kind of like it's almost like I don't really believe in karma, but if there was karma, sometimes I think I'm cursed because, my family, there's a lot of depression issues, right? And so dad killed himself. They found one of my uncles hanging. And when they found the uncle hanging, he had a letter and he wrote a note. And I told this story before, and it said, I have no family when they found him. And my uncle told the story, and it was an incredibly cold story as I've told before. And he's like, yeah, we found Uncle Dennis dead, which is, yeah, Uncle Dennis, that's his name, right? Uncle, God, I'm getting old. I know I say Dennis is weird because I got that one stalker Dennis, but this was Uncle Dennis, I think, right? I think because it was when I was a kid. I've only seen him a few times in my entire life. I think it was Uncle Dennis was his name. But my other uncle said when they were notified that he died, they came, they saw him, and they were like, do you want to sign off that this is your brother? And the uncle said, I refuse to say he was my brother. He's like, because we don't talk. And he's like, I don't know if he has any bills or anything like that, so I don't want to be responsible. If we're not family, we're not family. And it's like, ooh, that's a real cold fucking story, but that's the kind of family I grew up in, dude. And he told that story. It's like, if we're not family, we're not family. But the thing is about that uncle too, he was kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the family, And his story was that he was injured apparently, and I remember being as a kid scared too, and his eye was fucked up because he had fallen down on a bicycle apparently, and it like fucked up his eye, and so like he only had like half eye or some shit like that. It was his eye was messed up, and so it looked scary when I was a kid, right? And so his like family rejected him. I mean, not a good thing, right? And then the mom's side, well, I could even say my middle brother. I told the story. Middle brother found him hanging. They got him down before he died, and then he ran into the middle of the road and he tried to get run over while he was naked, I guess. And then they found him sleeping naked in a field or some shit like that, So, my younger brother, there's constantly a thing that you can't say anything bad about my younger brother because he'll kill himself. Depression issues. Don't say anything bad about him. Can't, my mom is manic depressive and bipolar. My mom, has abused me. Sometimes I don't even know if my mom is actually manic depressive or bipolar or just an evil person, to be honest. The things that I've seen my mom do, I've said before, I've seen, I see why like a woman cannot be trusted. Like I've seen my mom use people to just such evil extents, and almost to a sad extent too, because I've seen as my mom has grown older that I see that she no longer has the power over men, and it's I feel no love for my mother. I feel pity for her. Right? It's almost hard to even hate my mom because I feel how pathetic and pitiful it must be to. She's hated her entire life, and I've seen her use people, and but she'll always get away with it because she would just say that, oh, I was really sick, or I'm bipolar, or I'm manic depressive, blah blah blah. Who knows if it's even real, right? But my mom, she let her boyfriends abuse me and all that kind of stuff, and I always say so. There's a lot of like negative vibes in my family, right? And I always say it was, and of course, okay, so I was abused, all that kind of stuff, and then I was also bullied at school, rocks thrown at my face, all that kind of stuff. Always being told how ugly I was, and then I saw how different people treated me once I quotation marks became cool, and so I saw how petty people could be, right? And but whatever the case, then I found out I was good at video games, and my life started turning around. I became cool, which made me not trust people, but I became cool, and you're getting offered modeling jobs and all this kind of stuff, and then right after that, it felt like I started getting sick. And again, I didn't even, who knows how exactly long I was sick because I had, dropped out of school very early, right? And, I, again, to show my family, dude, when I dropped out of school, 14 years old, dude, I'm paying for all my own shit. I got to pay to eat. I don't have someone that's going to pay for all my food like that. I had to pay rent, you know? So, I had a full-time job. And so, and then I was still, being social. So who knows exactly how long I was actually sick, but of course I've told the story before that, I would go back and I've read journals before and I was talking about being really sick and confused. Like maybe I'm just working too much. I'm just doing too much shit. And then of course life goes to shit. And then I get sick. And it's almost like when I talk about karma, it's like, oh my God, maybe I could finally get away from my family. And then it was like, you're going to die. And it was like, fuck, And the school story, I'll tell that too, just because again, I know I've had a kind of a weird life, right? The school story, even my mom, when I was growing up, she wanted everyone to say that they were retarded because then you would get money from the government. And I was like, I'm not going to say I'm retarded. That's retarded. That's stupid. But, I remember, and this is kind of a funny story. I told the story before about when I was in special ed for a little bit because my mom she really kept trying to tell people that I was retarded because she wanted money. And I was like, I refused to do it. And so the school, and this was right before I dropped out, so it would have been like freshman year or whatever. And and this is kind of a funny story, I guess, but the school was really trying to be like, you're retarded, even though I was like, not like a smart kid, but I got, B student, I would say, not super smart, some A's, B's, not super smart, but, whatever. And so the school was having a really tough time figuring out how to make me retarded. Basically, it sounds funny. And so I remember the story, and they're like, it was a real big fat lady was doing like the interview analysis of me. And I remember it just sticks out to me because she asked some question and she's like, Clayton, how do you make friends? What makes someone popular with people? And it just goes to show you the level of how stupid people are. And I was like, well, you're probably popular if, you have a lot of charisma, you're charismatic. And I remember this like fat tub of lard lady, right? She was like, charisma, charismatic. And she's like, oh, geez, these are big words. And she like pulled back and you could tell she's like, I don't know how to get this guy to be retarded, right? And so she's like, and she looked around the room, and the room is probably, this is a little den right here, probably a little smaller than this. It was just like a little desk and me and her against each other. And she's like looking at me and she's like, can you skip And I was like, what do you mean do you skip? She's like, can you hop? And I was like, what do you mean can I skip or can I stop? And she's like, I want to see you skip and hop around this room. And I was like, what? And I was like, I mean, to skip and hop, it's kind of like a groove. You got to get like, you need a little bit of momentum to start skipping and hopping. And she's like, oh, well, I can skip and hop just fine. And, she's kind of dumpy, fat. And well, fuck me. I told the story. She didn't need a running start to start skipping and hopping. And she's like, we can put you in special ed. And I was like, what? What? It's so they put me in special ed for, and again, I dropped out so early and I saw special ed. I was like, oh my God, they just give people the answers. I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, this is making me stupider just being here. And you could take time outs if you didn't feel good. And so it was just like, I need a timeout. And so I would just keep skipping school. It just made me skip school even more because you're like, yeah, I need a timeout, I guess. It's so you would just leave. It was just like, whatever. But that's a weird story. But of course, it just goes to show the weird shit. And then, this story is also relevant because think about how many stalkers I've had in the video game community. Just absolutely insane people. And, just yesterday and the night before, or it's Thursday. So Tuesday night and then to like Wednesday, just sick, man. These cluster headaches, again, most fucking painful thing, human condition, known to man, some doctors say, right? I've had one fucking week where I have not had it. And I've just had regular kind of like migraine pain. 4 months of this shit. And it's like making me insane. It's so fucking painful, dude. And so, and you think about, I've been through dying stuff. Who knows how long I'll be alive still. I still do doctor shit all the time. Still sick all the time, And what I'm getting at there is, Jesus Christ, I've given my will 2008, right? So what I'm getting at there is you got to understand like the context and the perspective. So your perspective is what keeps you going in life, right? Whether that comes from a good place or a bad place is like up to you, but it's got to be a perspective that keeps you going, right? Just like the context is king, right? So when I got that message about the dad thing, and it's like, the dad thing at face value, yes, it's a weird story. It's very crazy. It's crazy to think that I told my dad he was going to die. And I told that the dream wasn't exactly how he died. If you want to know the dream, I had a dream. It was like Mario Brothers. And me and my dad went down a Mario Brother pipe. We went down the pipe. And then when we got out of the pipe, the guy went and shot my dad and killed him. Obviously, my dad didn't do that. He took a boom right to his head. But still pretty crazy to think that I dreamt that. I woke up and it was such like a vivid dream that I just was like sure it was going to happen. And boom, killed himself right after that. Blood on the floor. Right? So, So at face value, crazy story. But if you think about the context, you think about the life that I've had, it's like, it wasn't like I came from a family where everybody loves each other. It wasn't like I lost a loved one. I lost my dad, but it wasn't like I loved my dad, right? Do you know what I mean? And so that's why I say like context is king, perspective. Like look at the life I've had. Not the worst life you could have. I mean, there could be much worse, but a life filled with lots of weird shit, right? And so I think if you think about it like that, it's just kind of like, well, that's weird, but I could see why it wouldn't, affect you as well. It might somebody else who loved their family members. Just like if you told my middle brother died, I mean, my middle brother, he's kind of crazy. We don't talk. If he died, he died, I mean, there's like no love lost, dude. Just like even when my grandma died, well, that the one grandma died, of course, there's like, I was like, whoa, I have a lot of respect for you. But even by the time that the grandma that, my mom's side grandma, when she died, right, she was just, and, I guess it's one of those things, that grandma, I've said before, my family has always had this like fascination with death, right? Ever since growing up, my grandma and everybody, it just seemed like they wanted to talk about dying because they're like very religious and they're like, I can't wait time with Jesus. I can't wait time with Jesus. I want to die. And, my grandma, she had like heart attacks very early, right? So, if you're wondering about like other, family members, like health wise, right? My aunt, she did have like, cancer and then, thyroid stuff and breast cancer, that kind of stuff. So, some of the thyroid stuff, that definitely, goes in the family. you know, just I did the radiation and it fucked me up permanently, obviously, unfortunately. But my grandma, there's been like a lot of like early heart attacks in the family. She had like heart attacks in her 40s or something like that. She was already, I don't know how many heart attacks my grandma had before she died, but it was a lot, right? And so even when I was a kid, my grandma was always telling me it's going to be so great when we die. Jesus is so great because she apparently was brought back to life. And so she thinks that she saw Jesus. And so she's like, I just want to die. And I've told the story before. I remember even when I was finally, again, I found out I was good at video games, which again, I didn't know I was good at video games because it's not like I'm really playing, right? But it's like, oh, I'm actually good at games. I can make money. What? Oh, fuck. I'm like cool now. Girls like me and I got a job as a model. And I was like, whoa, life is really kind of turning around from all this like darkness. And I remember my grandma, she was just still coming to me. She's like, don't you just want to die? Isn't it going to be so amazing when we all die? I just want to see Jesus so much. And then, my grandma. And I wasn't there for the conversation, but I've heard it before. But apparently my grandma, she's like, you know what? I think Clayton might be depressed. I think he might be depressed. We don't want him to kill himself like Dave. Dave was my dad, right? We better make sure, just, I'm afraid you're going to kill yourself. And I was like, you guys are the ones that are crazy, right? And so then, to get sick was just, that's why I feel like I don't, believe in karma, but I'm always like, oh my God, if there's any karma, maybe I was a bad person in another life when I think about, living my life in and out of a hospital now. You know what I mean? And so, after that happened, and then that grandma died, I gotta be honest, it's just kind of like there's just, the love is just gone. It's like, I just don't want to say I love you to anyone, like, so this was like, just like, again, that's why I say the dad story's crazy, but look at the life I've had, dude. And that's like, I'm the only person, like I said, I'm weird in my family, I'm the only person that had blonde hair, only person that had blue eyes, that's pretty weird, right? Tallest of the family, although my dad was taller. I didn't get his height. Maybe if I didn't get sick, I would have got taller. I'm 5'11" out of bed. My dad was apparently 6'3". Who knows? I don't even remember anymore, but he's apparently a very tall guy. Who knows? Stopped growing after I got sick, I guess, but still the tallest of the family, of the brothers. Only one with blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm also, another weird thing, I'm also the only one that ever had acne, which is very weird too. Pretty strange, you would think, So, I mean, I'm an anomaly. I'm the only person that works out in the family. I guess my mom worked out a little bit, I guess, but I'm the only person, like, my life is like dedicated to health, right? Just like, that's why, like, why do you think that I was able to live after doctors tell me I'm dying and how I was able to teach myself to walk again, all this kind of stuff, It's because it's like I've said before, I didn't have a good life growing up. Just like when I was talking to that guy, we're getting our tumors checked up on, and, he's talking about the weed thing, right? And we're talking about weed, and I'm like, because I get medical marijuana if I want it, right? For years I could get it. But I'm like, nah, I don't take any of that stuff. And I'm like, dude, and I'm like, I'm already so tired, and I'm like, I don't need to be any more tired. And I'm like, why would I like take away a couple of points of pain to add even more fatigue on top of everything? It's better for me just to deal with the pain because I don't want to lay in bed all day. I want to do stuff. I don't want to die a fucking sick person. And I'm talking to this guy, and these other guys, and you can tell they're like, and he was just like, no, I'm ready to die. I don't care. And that's why I always say, you grow up your whole life talking to these other people, and most people will never experience what it's like to be dying like I was at my age. You know what I mean? To have your doctors telling you to die as long as or to have your doctors telling you could die at the age I was, to be given your will, you know, all this kind of shit, And I've always, you're surrounded by old people. And a lot of these old people, guess what? They're just like, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to die. I don't care. I'm ready to die. And then even you talk to other people and you find out other sick people, like they're in competitions to be who's the sickest. Like I've told that one story. It's just weird. It's just a bunch of fucking grandmas and girls, and they're older, and they were in a competition to see who was the sickest. And I was just like, what are you doing? Do you want to be sick? Like this sucks. That's why I always say, like, I don't really have a lot of respect for people that are depressed, right? Like, obviously I get sad sometimes too. But if I just decided to be depressed, I would be dead by now, right? It's like if I just I'm depressed. Well, then guess what? My life's over. If you're sick and depressed, that's a fucking suicidal combo. I would probably be dead if I didn't keep myself as healthy as I was. I said before, there was a time I was going to the hospital, especially after I was dying and doctors were giving me my will. And, there was a time, especially when doctors like, oh my God, you're testing positive for like every disease known to man right now. How are you alive? I went to a doctor. He couldn't even believe it was me. He's like, is this you? He's like, I expected you to be in much worse shape than you looking at this medical record. And I was like, yeah, I'm alive. I mean, a lot of these people, they just, but because I had such a bad life, growing up, and it could be worse, but, I think most people, when they get sick, they're older. Maybe they're like, well, I had a good life. Or, oh, maybe like my grandma, oh, well, I'm religious, so Jesus is waiting for me. Guess what? I didn't have a good life growing up. There's no fucking happy memories, right? I'm not religious. I'm not waiting for Jesus. I'm not waiting to die to be with Jesus. Like, yo, high five, Jesus. Thanks for giving me this shitty life. Thank you for giving me so many weird fucking stalkers from a video game community mad that I beat them in a game. Like, high five, Jesus. I don't care about that, dude. Right? So that's why I say perspective, dude. It's like, dude, I'm dealing, like I said, I got the fucking most painful human known condition to man I've been dealing with for 4 months straight. Do you have any idea how much fucking pain I am in consistently? Right? I've had 1 week in 4 weeks where I've not had a cluster headache right now. I got bigger things to do than be like, oh yeah, my dad died when I was a kid and I told him he was going to die and he still did it. So anyway, I appreciate the comment though, being like, oh, you're strong. I can't believe that happened to you. But again, the perspective is, it wasn't like I love my dad and he did that. It was kind of like my dad did that. You know what I mean? Anyway. Remember, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate it. Thanks. The end.